Hi, I'm Joe Fourten. I am the founder of the Hollywood Poker Academy, and what I'm here to do today is not to teach you how to play poker. I'm here to teach you how to make money playing poker. There's a big difference. 90% of all poker players are losers. 10% are winners. 10% have patience. 90% have no patience. 10% of poker players study the game, they read books, and they have discipline. The other 90%, which is most of the people out there, including people watching this DVD right now, donate to the game. Hey, not everybody's in this game to make money. Personally, the only reason I do this is to make money. Playing poker is very easy to do. Anybody can learn how to play poker. If you don't really know much about poker, what you can do is go to one of the many online websites. There's about 140 online poker websites you can play at that cost no money. You can use play money and you can learn the game. The 90% of poker players that do play poker donate to the game. They're constantly adding money into their accounts. They're constantly reaching in their wallets. The other 10% are sitting, waiting for the good opportunity to make money. Most people play poker the way a lion cub hunts for food. Let me give you this example. When a lion teaches their cubs how to hunt for food, okay? She'll wound a gazelle, she'll show it to her young, and the young cubs, who don't really have a killer instinct yet, will play with that wounded gazelle. They don't know how to kill it. The little gazelle will run away, they'll swat it down, chase it, but these young lion cubs, 8, 9 months, are playing with their food. They're playing, they don't have the killer instinct yet. What I'm gonna show you how to do is I'm gonna show you how to hunt for food like a leopard hunts for food. What a leopard does is he gets up in a tree and he waits. A leopard has patience. A leopard will wait up in a tree for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 2 days, whatever it takes. He's gonna stay up in that tree and he's gonna wait. What's he waiting for? He's waiting for a sure thing. He's waiting for dinner basically to show up under his tree. He's gonna jump out of the tree. He's gonna jump on that gazelle and devour it in literally 2 seconds. Then he's back up in the tree waiting. That's what a professional poker player does. That's a basic analogy. Mainly playing poker is about patience, discipline, and aggression. And that's what I'm going to show you here today is poker players need to be patient, you need to be selective, and you need to be very aggressive when the time is right. What I'm going to talk about right now is very basic and simple, but it's very, very important, and that is using a card protector when you play your hand. A card protector is basically this. Say you're dealt your 2 cards, okay? And I'm going to give this guy 2 cards also. And let's assume there's other players at the table. Okay. I look at my 2 cards and I decide, yes, I do want to play them. I'm not going to fold. So you use a card protector on top of your 2 cards. This is very basic and you might think this is stupid to even talk about. But I've seen a lot of players not use a card protector and a mistake will happen made by another player and their hand is dead. They might have the best hand at the table. There could be a huge pot and it doesn't matter. Their hand is done. And here's an example of what would happen if you don't use a card protector. And a card protector can also just be a couple of chips, okay? It just lets the dealer know that you do want to play your hand. If you just leave your cards sitting there like that, the dealer might just pull them in and assume you're not wanting to play. So you put a couple of chips, a coin, or whatever you'd like as your chip protector, and here's why. Let's say you don't use your chip protector and you've got your 2 cards sitting here and you got 2 aces. You want to play them, you can't wait to play them, okay? This guy over here decides he's not wanting to play his hand and he throws his hands into the muck. A lot of times, because these cards and tables are very slippery, cards will bounce off the chips and bounce right into my cards right there. Now, how do I know which 2 cards are mine? I'm going to tell the dealer, well, hey, I had 2 aces. That's not right with the other players. They don't believe that. You could have mixed them in and what have you. So, if you use a card protector, that's taken care of. It can never happen. Now, one other thing which relates to using a card protector on the internet, okay? When you're playing online, you keep your cursor always on the table itself, okay? A lot of times when you're playing online, you'll be playing more than one table, okay? Your cursor could accidentally be on the fold button, okay? So when you're switching from table to table, always keep your cursor on the poker table itself, because there's no danger when your cursor is on the poker table. The danger is making a mistake with a click. I've folded quad queens before with a mistake with my cursor. So always keep your mouse cursor on the table itself, and you'll prevent yourself from making mistakes. When playing live, always use a card protector when you're gonna play, and you'll avoid some stupid mistakes. All right, what I'd like to talk about now is tracking your progress. In other words, keeping records of your play. As I said before, 90% of poker players are losers. Most of them consider themselves winners. They don't even know they're losing. The reason they don't know is because they're not tracking their progress. You must track your progress every time you play. If you're gonna play a quick online session, you need to write down what limit you played at. You need to write down what site you were playing at. You need to write down how much you made during the session, how much you lost during the session. You need to keep track of other players by keeping notes on the other players. You can usually do that online in the computer, or if you're playing live, maybe you keep a little notebook of people that you're seeing on a regular basis. But it's very important to track your progress. Otherwise, you'll never know if you're winning or losing at the end of a year. You can't win every single session when you play poker. It's impossible. Nobody wins every time, but you can win most of the time. The only way you'll know, though, is to keep detailed statistics of your progress. As I said, make sure you know what limit you played at, how long you played, what time of day was it, how much you bought in with, how much you lost, how much you made. And by keeping track of your progress, at the end of a year, you'll be able to look at your sheet and you'll be able to see how you did, how you're doing. Maybe you're playing better at night. Maybe you're playing better online. Maybe you're playing when it's 4 in the morning and you're drunk. Who knows? But the only way of knowing that is to keep track of your progress. All good poker players keep detailed statistics of how they do. And I recommend you do that also, or you'll never know how you're doing. All right, what we're going to talk about right now is probably the most important aspects of Texas Hold'em, and that is position and starting hands. What we're going to focus on, though, is limit Texas Hold'em, okay? 80% of the income generated by professional poker players is playing limit Texas Hold'em, not no limit. No limit Texas Hold'em is what you see on TV. Yeah, that's popular, it's sweeping the nation, but limit Hold'em is how professional poker players make about 80% of their money. What you see on TV, obviously, is no limit, and you're seeing final table action. That is not the way to play. With no limit Hold'em, especially in tournaments, the blinds are increasing every 15, 20 minutes, every half hour, what have you. So you have to speed up your play, otherwise you're gonna run out of chips because you're gonna be blinded out, okay? But in limit Hold'em, the blinds stay the same forever. So you can stay patient forever. What we're gonna talk about now is starting hands and position. So Taya here is gonna be the small blind. We'll say we're playing just $1, $2 limit Hold'em for now. So she's the small blind. This is TJ, he's gonna be the big blind. I am first act, and Anthony is gonna be the dealer. So we deal the cards. Okay, dealer, small blind, big blind, under the gun. Since TJ is the big blind, I am first act, so I am under the gun. To play from my position, being first to act under the gun, you have to have a very strong hand. I want to have a pair of aces. I want to have a pair of kings. I want to have a pair of queens, a pair of jacks, and any two cards over 10 that are suited. So if I have a king jack, I would play from this position, suited. If I had a queen jack suited, I would play from this position. I would also want to play most pocket pairs from this position. Pocket pairs are very powerful no matter what position you're in, especially in limit hold'em, okay? No limit hold'em as well. I am first to act before the flop. When you're first to act, you want to have a very, very strong hand to play, or just wait. Reason is because, let's say I have a mediocre hand. Let's say I have a king jack unsuited and I just limp into the pot, I call, okay? Let's say you're at a full table where there's 8, 9 people playing. Chances are somebody's going to have a very big hand. They're going to raise. There could be a re-raise. And here I am, first to act with my king jack, which is a trouble hand, not a very good hand to have, and I am in bad position. So when you are first to enter the pot, being under the gun, you want to have a very, very strong hand to play. Otherwise, don't play. That's number one. Under the gun, position hands must be very strong. Now, when you're playing, and let's say the under the gun person raises, okay? I come in with a raise, so I'm doubling the bet. You can assume as a player at the table that I have a very strong hand, okay? So, if you are one of the other players in other positions and what have you, and you see the first person coming in or the second person raising, they know that they're raising with still 7, 8 people to act behind them. So you have got to assume they have a very, very strong hand, okay? The only way you should enter the pot when somebody in an early position raises, you've got to have a very strong hand yourself. Otherwise, it's just best to wait. David Sklansky, who's one of the top authors of poker, I also would recommend reading every book that he's written. He has probably a dozen books that he's written. But he talks about the gap concept. The gap concept is probably one of the most important things to know as far as playing hold'em goes, limit or no limit. The gap concept is basically when the pot is raised by someone, you yourself must raise your standards in order to enter the pot with someone that's raised. When someone raises the pot, you can assume they have a big hand. Like let's say they have ace-king, okay? And you have ace-queen. When the pot is raised and you have ace-queen, you're in a lot of trouble. Because if the person raising does have ace-king and everybody that gets ace-king raises ace-king, you need to have the discipline and the ability to let the ace-queen go. Just fold it before the flop. That's called the gap concept. That means you're tightening up your standards to enter a pot when the pot is raised before you. So we're going to deal a hand just to explain to you about the gap concept. Now, Tay is the small blind, TJ is the big blind. I'm first to act, and I like my cards, okay? I'm going to raise it up to 4, okay? Now it's Anthony's turn to decide what he wants to do. If he was considering playing the hand and I had just called just 2 chips and he wants to play, he'd call also. But the fact that I raised, now Anthony must take the gap concept into consideration. He must have a very strong hand in order to play. If he wants to just call, as I said, he should really try to see the flop if he has any pocket pair, if he has 2 cards above a 10 that are suited, you want to see the flop with. So, as I said, very important, if you have a mediocre hand and someone raises before you, it's probably better off just to wait. All right, now we're going to talk about playing the blinds when you are on the small blind or the big blind and the pot is raised before it gets to you. Here's an example. Again, Anthony will be the dealer. Taya is the small blind, so she puts up 1 chip. TJ puts up 2, okay? All right, so let's say I am under the gun and I raise, okay? So I am putting up 4 chips, okay? Anthony doesn't like his hand, so he folds. Now Taya is the small blind, so she has only got $1 invested into the pot. Taya should only play, add more money to the pot. Again, we're back to the gap concept. She should see the flop with a pocket pair, any 2 cards above 10 that are suited. Otherwise, she should really just let it go when the pot is raised because she only has $1 invested. So Taya folds because she doesn't have a good hand. Because with Texas Hold'em, you don't want to waste chips. Chips are very valuable. Chips are money. So you don't want to waste them because you're bored or because you just you want to play. You really want to be disciplined, and when you're on the blinds is a very good example of that. Now TJ, on the other hand, is the big blind. He's got a full bet invested, okay? I recommend not wasting any more money on the big blind unless, obviously, he has a pocket pair. If he has any 2 cards that could make a straight, if he has a Jack 8, if he has a 7-5, if he has any 2 cards that are above a 10, if he has 2 cards that are suited, anything that has some sort of a possibility, he should also call the big blind. Call the raise because he's already got 2 chips invested. So TJ would call, and as I said, the only way you're going to add more money into the pot if it's raised and you're on the big blind is if you have a pocket pair, any 2 cards that could possibly make a straight, or any suited cards. And if that happens and you call the bet, you obviously got to hit a very big flop, or otherwise you just let it go. So you're really hoping when the pot is raised under an early position and you're the big blind, okay, you're really hoping to hit a big flop. Because TJ, as being the big blind, the fact that I raised early and I'm under the gun, he could almost assume I have pocket aces or pocket kings. So he's going to need a very good flop in order to continue with the hand. He's going to need a nice flush draw. He's going to need a straight draw. He's going to need 2 pair. Otherwise, he just lets it go. But since he's already got 2 chips invested into the pot and it's raised, it only costs him another 2 to see the flop. If his 2 cards cannot make a straight or a flush, for example, if on the big blind, if he has a 7 queen and it's not suited, he doesn't put any more money in the pot. He just gives it up and waits for a better situation. If he has a 7-2, if it's not suited, he just gives his money up, lets the person take the blind and the antes, if what have you. So when you're on the big blind, see the flop in a raised pot only if your 2 cards can make a straight, a flush, or you have a pocket pair or 2 cards above 10. There you go. All right, what I'm going to talk about right now is resisting temptation to play suited crap. Suited crap is, let's say you have a Jack 6 of clubs and you're bored. Let's say you have a 6-10 of clubs and you're bored. You don't want to limp in with those hands. Those are garbage hands, they're trouble hands. You can do nothing but get into trouble by playing a hand simply because it's suited. Because what's going to happen most of the time with your Jack 6 suited, you're going to limp in, you might hit a bottom pair, you might hit a flush draw, and you're not going to make your draw most of the time. So, for example, again, Anthony is the dealer, Taya is the small blind, so she has a forced bet of $1, TJ with 2. We deal the hand. Okay. Again, I am first to act, okay? And I don't like my hand, so I'm going to fold, okay? Now let's say, assume there's a couple other players here, all right? And now it's Anthony's turn, and Anthony has 2-3 suited. Lay that on the table for us, will you? So Anthony's got a 2-3 suited. That is a suited connector. A lot of people will tell you, hey, suited connectors are great to play. They're fantastic. I love suited connectors. This is a very vulnerable hand, okay? He's mainly gonna pick up a draw. Most of the time, he's not gonna hit his draw. Another hand that should not be played, but a lot of people will. Again, let's say Anthony has now the Jack-6 and he's bored. Again, you do not wanna play hands simply because they're suited. If you're making a move and you're trying to steal a pot from somebody, that's a different scenario. But we're talking about playing limit hold'em. We're talking about a table with about 7, 8, 9 people, okay? Right now we're only 4 people here, but we're assuming that we're at a full table with 8, 9, 10 people. You must resist playing crappy hands out of boredom. You must resist because they're suited, and you must resist, period. Don't play suited crap. 5, 6 suited and no limit may be a good hand if there's a few people in the pot with you and you gotta hit a strong flop. Suited connectors do have a time to play, but in limit hold'em, suited hands, unless they're big cards, are really a waste of time. And another hand that is a very bad hand to play, yet people play it all the time, is a king suited. For example, you have a king and you have an 8 of spades, okay? Bad hand to play. Bad hand to play. If you're gonna play a suited hand, make sure you're playing the ace suited, not with the king. Again, flopping a flush, it's 118 to 1 against you actually flopping a flush, okay? If you play a hand like this, it's really only good to play for its flush possibilities or for its 2-pair possibilities or its trips possibilities. So if the flop comes 2 5s and a 3, then you've got a hand. But if the flop comes with a king on the board, now you're in trouble, okay? You might have top pair, but your 5 is your kicker. You're in a lot of trouble. All right, so now what we're going to talk about is position. We talked about early position, meaning if you are first to act, second to act, or third to act before the flop, you want to have a very strong hand in order to enter the pot, okay? Now we're going to talk about middle position. When you are in a middle position and you're first to enter the pot, you can lower your standards for entering the pot or for raising the pot. So let's deal a hand. Tay is going to be the dealer. TJ is the small blind, I am the big blind. We're going to deal a hand for 2 fictitious players, just so we can make our point. Okay, I am the big blind, this guy's first to act. Let's say he folds, second guy folds. Now Anthony is first to go. He's in a middle position. He can lower his standards for entering the pot or for raising the pot. Very important. Now, he doesn't have to have aces, kings, queens, jacks, or 2 cards above 10 that are suited to enter the pot. Okay, he's first to enter the pot. He's in a middle position. He can lower his standards for raising. It's also a good time to make a move on a pot by representing he has aces or kings. The key is he's first to enter the pot and he's in a middle position, all right? It'd be a little different if, let's say, this first player who's under the gun, let's say this player just calls, okay? Now, the second player folds. Now it's Anthony's turn in a middle position, but there's already 1 player in the pot, okay? Anthony has to have a somewhat of a decent hand in order to enter the pot. He can also represent a very strong hand by raising the pot. But when you're in a middle position, you should see the flop with any pocket pair. You should see the flop with any 2 cards above 10. You should now see the flop if you have a hand such as a Jack-10 suited, a 9-10 suited. Again, you want to resist playing hands from this position that have a small opportunity for actually winning the pot, meaning, again, playing suited crap. Low cards that are suited, just not a good hand to play. Again, most people, when they see two cards that are suited, no matter what position, they're very excited. But as I said, what happens when you play those hands, you'll pick up a draw, you'll play it to the end, and you'll either end up folding or you'll lose to somebody with the top pair. So for middle position, you can lower your standards for raising, and you can also do more raising if you're first to enter. So if Anthony is the first to enter from this middle position, if he is going to play, if he has a hand that's playable, such as a Jack 10 suited, he has an Ace 10, he has a pair of pocket 5s, pocket 6s, because he's first to enter, he can go ahead and raise. Because now he's representing a big hand and he's only got the dealer, the small blind, and the big blind to act after him. Since he's first to enter, he could raise with almost any hand representing a big hand. All right, what we're going to talk about now is when you're in late position. That means when you're the dealer or when you're just before the dealer. These are positions that are late, meaning everyone has acted before the flop before them, so they are in a late position. So I am going to be the big blind, TJ's the small blind, and we'll deal a hand. We're going to use these as players here. All right, now, playing in late position, totally different than playing in early position, totally different than playing in middle position. When you're in a late position, okay, meaning I am the big blind, this person is under the gun, or early position, this person is early position, also under the gun. Now we're starting to get into late position, okay, with Anthony and Taya, okay? Now, if you are first to enter the pot and you are in late position, okay, that's a time when you can steal, when you can make a steal attempt at a pot, whether you're playing in limit, no limit, or you're playing in a tournament, okay? If you are first to enter the pot and you are in a late position, you can raise with almost any two cards. The cards are almost non-existent. It doesn't matter what your cards are when you're in a late position if you're first to enter. So for example, this person is first to act, he folds. This person folds, this person folds. Now Anthony is in a late position, okay? So for example, if Anthony were to have a hand such as a Jack 8, whether it's suited or not, he does have a chance to make a straight. He could play a suited connector from that position. And what is recommended if you're gonna play from that late position and you're first to enter the pot, you really wanna bring it in with a raise. Because again, when you raise, you are representing that you have a very strong hand, okay? So now Anthony's first to act, he's in late position, and he brings it in with a raise, okay? Now Taya is on the dealer button. Now, because Anthony raised, Taya must take into consideration, again, the gap concept. Because the pot was raised, you must think, I must have a very strong hand in order to enter the pot. There is an exception, okay? And that is to the style, to the type of player that Anthony is, okay? All good players realize that if everybody folds to someone in a late position, that person will raise with almost anything. And as a player at the table, if you've been watching the game, you see Anthony's raising all the time, you can lower your standards for the gap concept because you think he's stealing. But if Anthony's a player that's folding all the time, he's a very tight player, and he's raising, then you really got to think that he's raising with something strong, and he's really not just trying to steal the blinds. So in a late position, you can lower your standards for entering a pot. If you're first to enter the pot, you should bring it in with a raise. If you're in a late position and one of the early position players has called the bet, then if you just have a mediocre hand and you're in late position, you should just call the bet as well, okay? See the flop. But what's really important in Texas Hold'em, limit or no limit, is raising. Representing a big hand and hold'em is a very powerful way to play. So, for example, if everybody folds to Anthony, put another 2 chips, Anthony does raise before the flop, Taya folds, TJ folds, okay? Now it's back to me. I am the big blind. What do I want to do? Well, because he raised, again, I'll see the flop if I have a pocket pair. I'll see the flop if my 2 cards are suited, or I'll see the flop if my 2 cards can make a straight, okay? I have a 4 and an 8, okay? That's a terrible hand, okay? But Anthony is a late position raiser, meaning he could be a stealer. He could be trying to steal the pot. Because my 2 cards can make a straight, I will also call his raise just to see the flop. Flip over your 2 cards. I haven't really shuffled or what have you. So he raised with ace-10 just to deal a flop, just to see, okay? I've got a piece of the flop. I've got a pair of 8s, okay? Obviously I wouldn't know what Anthony has, but the reason I'm seeing the flop is just in case this is the flop, okay? Now I've got 2 pair. I limped in going against a late position raiser, and I've hit 2 pair. So now I'm gonna play very strong. But the key is, if you only hit 1 pair, okay, let's say this is my starting hand. I only hit a pair of 4s. I'm gonna let it go. When I'm seeing the flop in a raised pot and I'm on the blind, and I'm assuming he's on a steal because he is raising from a late position and he's first to enter the pot, what I'm hoping for by putting in my extra 2 chips, I'm hoping to hit a strong flop. I'm hoping to hit 3 of a kind. I'm hoping to hit a straight. I'm hoping to hit 2 pair. Otherwise, I'm done with the hand. But if you're on the big blind and the pot is raised, again, see the flop if you can make a straight, a flush, 2 cards above a 10, or you have a small pocket pair. So late position, again, you can lower your standards for raising. Again, raising is a very powerful way to play. If you don't feel you have a hand that's strong enough for raising, then you shouldn't enter the pot at all. All right, what we're going to talk about right now is stealing from a stealer, okay? And that usually happens when you're on the big blind and the dealer button is making a steal attempt. Here's how that works. Taya will be the small blind, TJ is the big blind, so I will be under the gun, Anthony is the dealer, okay? So we'll deal a hand. I'm going to give Anthony these 2. It doesn't matter the cards that we have here. What matters is the situation, okay? I am first to act, so I am gonna fold, okay? And let's just assume everybody folds to the button. Anthony is the button, he's the dealer. The dealer has the most favorable position in the game. Reason is because he's last to act once we see the flop. He's last to act. Everybody has to decide what they wanna do, and then Anthony gets to go last. When everybody folds to the dealer, a lot of times this dealer will make a steal attempt at the blind money. What we're talking about now is stealing from a stealer. TJ would be the one stealing from Anthony, who's stealing. Stealing from a stealer. The way it works is this. Everybody folds to Anthony. Anthony's the dealer, and Anthony raises, okay? Taya folds. Now TJ, because he's been watching Anthony, he sees Anthony does a lot of stealing, he sees he does a lot of raising. So TJ is gonna call with almost anything he has. And he's gonna know in advance that Anthony is trying to steal. He knows that in his head, okay? So now we see the flop. Okay, here's the flop, okay? Now, TJ, no matter what comes on the flop, is going to check. Okay, money's in the pot, so TJ checks. Anthony raised. So he's representing a big hand. He's representing ace king, ace queen, ace jack. He's representing a big hand. So you can assume he is going to bet on the flop really with no matter what comes. TJ knows this in advance. Again, TJ is the one that's going to be stealing from Anthony. So now Anthony sees the flop and automatically puts his 2 chips into bet, okay? Where TJ will call. With it, no matter what comes on the flop, TJ will call because he's setting him up for the actual turn card, okay? Because he knows Anthony is going to bet no matter what happens. So now we play the turn card. Now here's where TJ is going to make a steal. Again, TJ is going to check, and he knows Anthony is an aggressive player. And Anthony, again, now the bets are doubled, is going to put his $4 bet in there. 2 more, okay? And now TJ is going to steal from Anthony by check raising. So TJ checked, Anthony bets, and now TJ is raising, representing he has something, okay? TJ doesn't even need to look at what 2 cards he has, okay, because he's putting Anthony on a steal. So now Anthony has a decision to make. Does he have a piece of this flop? Well, let's see what Anthony has because he was trying a steal attempt. Okay, Anthony's got a queen 10 from the button. That's a very good hand to steal with. But as you see, he's got no help on the flop, okay? TJ, by check raising, show us your cards, TJ. Okay, TJ has an 8-9, so he does have a pair of 9s. Now, because TJ check raised, Anthony's got to assume TJ's got an ace, and he's going to let it go. He's going to fold. So Anthony tried to steal, so TJ's taken this whole pot simply by calling Anthony's steal attempt and by check raising. Check raising is a very powerful way to play in Hold'em. It's a sneaky way to play, but when somebody is stealing, when you think somebody is stealing, you're blind, make the call, see the flop, check, Anthony bets, you call, and then no matter what comes on the turn, try the check raise. This is a play that will work very often. It doesn't work every time. It also depends on who your opponent is. As I said, if Anthony's a very tight player, he's not doing a lot of stealing, then you're not going to do this check raise against him. But if you see Anthony's a frisky guy, he's always betting, he's in a lot of pots, he's making a lot of moves, you're going to make a move back at him by check raising. Very strong way to play. All right, what we're going to talk about right now is small pocket pairs. Small pocket pairs are pairs of 10s and below, okay? They can be played many different ways, but they're a very powerful hand. I mentioned earlier, when you have a small pocket pair, you really want to see the flop, okay? You have a 7-to-1 chance of flopping trips with your small pocket pair. Usually, you're going to need improvement with your pocket pair, but not all the time. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of why a pocket pair is better than, let's say, ace-king. Ace-king is a hand people fall in love with. You look at your whole card, you see ace-king, you think you hit the lottery, okay? But ace-king is a drawing hand. You must have help with ace-king, where a pocket pair, you don't need help. You've already got a pair. Because in Hold'em, people are going to miss the flop most of the time. Okay, unless you've got 7-8 people in the pot, okay? But if you're just in a pot with 3-4 people, most of the time people are going to miss the flop. But if you have a pocket pair, you've already got a pair. You've already got something. So a pocket pair can be raised with from any position. If you're under the gun, meaning your first, second, or third act before the flop, bring it in with a raise with your small pocket pair. They don't know if you got pocket aces. They don't know if you got kings. They don't know if you got ace-king, because that's what you're representing when you raise with a small pocket pair. And again, another reason you're raising is to thin the field. You want less opponents in the hand with you when you have your small pocket pair, okay? And as I said, you're going to flop trips 1 in 7 times you're going to actually flop trips. Where, let's say for example, you're playing a hand like Queen 10 suited, okay? Queen 10 suited needs help. People play Queen 10 suited, which is really considered a trouble hand, but they play it because it's suited. The odds of you actually flopping a flush when you have a Queen 10 suited are 118 to 1. Okay, that's to flop a flush, okay? If you happen to flop a flush draw, you're gonna miss your flush most of the time. But with your pocket pair, you're gonna hit trips 1 out of 7 times. And when you do hit trips, you tend to get a very big pot. No limit, you can take someone's entire stack when you're playing with ace king. Would you agree with that, TJ?
Yes.
You like pocket pairs?
My favorite.
Favorites, okay? Phil Ivey, one of the top poker players in the world, loves small pocket pairs. Phil Hellmuth wrote one of the best-selling poker books out. He deals with pocket pairs extensively. He loves pocket pairs. When I first started playing, I didn't really understand that. Now that I've been playing a while, I understand when you hit your pocket pairs, when you hit trips, you're gonna take a very big pot. So when you have pocket pairs, bring it in with a raise if you're first to act. If you're in a middle position and 2-3 people limped in before you, then just call with your pocket pairs. If you're first to enter the pot, even second, bring it in with a raise with your pocket pair. Now I'm going to show you an example that a lot of people just don't understand. But I am going to show you why a pocket pair is better to have than ace king. Okay? Very basic. This gentleman has ace king. I have pocket pairs. Okay? We're going to deal 5 cards. Okay, looking at this flop and the turn and river, you see ace king did not improve at all, okay? Me, with my pocket pair, I already have the best hand. Before the flop, I had the best hand. I got the best hand on the flop, and then the turn and the river, ace king did not improve. People misplay ace king more than any other hand in Hold'em. More people lose money with ace king than any other hand, and it's plain and simple because they fall in love. Understand when you are playing ace king, you need help. Yes, ace king is a hand you should raise with. Yes, ace king is a hand you should take a stab at with that flop, okay? Because you represented a big hand. But if the turn, river bring you no help, pocket twos are going to beat you every time. Without shuffling, I'm going to deal another 5 cards. Ace king again, no help. All right? Pocket twos are in the lead. Pocket twos were in the lead before the flop. They're in the lead after the flop. They're in the lead on the turn. They're in the lead on the river. So again, any pocket pair, see the flop with. It's a very, very powerful way to play. Now, for example, this player, you raise with your pocket twos coming in, okay? Guy on the button re-raises you with his ace king, okay? You should call. In your mind, you should be saying this guy that raised has pocket aces, pocket kings, okay? And if your flop comes, such as this, 4, 8, 5, and you believe your opponent has ace king and you're with your pocket pair, your first deck, you would check. The ace king, because he raised coming in, is almost always going to bet on the flop no matter what comes, and there's your chance for your check raise, okay? You check raise him. Again, most likely ace king, he's going to call because he's going to want to see that turn card, okay? There's your turn card, all right? Again, ace king got no help at all. I made trips, but it really doesn't matter what came on the turn. Really doesn't matter at all. 9 comes, he's still going to make his bet, but the fact that you check raised him and he called you, now you know you were correct. He has ace king, all right? If this gentleman, this player, whether it be a man or woman, doesn't matter, if they did have pocket aces, which they represented by raising, okay, and you try your check raise, all right, on the flop, and they re-raise you, now you can say to yourself, all right, my twos are no good, I can let it go. Because he would re-raise you with aces, he would re-raise you with kings, he'd re-raise you with queens, jacks, tens, and I'm only sitting there with a lowly pair of twos. So twos, pocket pairs, small pocket pairs are easy to get away from, but they're also a good way to make a lot of money. So pocket pairs, see the flop with from any position. If you're playing no limit and somebody gives you a raise 3-4 times the big blind and you do have pocket pairs below 10, then you should, depends on the player that's raising, see the flop, but a lot of times you do want to fold your pocket pair before the flop. It depends who's raising. If the raise isn't too big, see the flop, because if you do happen to hit trips and you're playing against an opponent with ace king and he hits a king and you hit trips, you're taking all his money. That's the bottom line. Pocket pairs are a hand in no limit that you can double up with. In a tournament, you can double up again, and in limit, you can get a pretty good pot. So with your pocket pairs, try and see the flop. They're one of the most powerful hands in Hold'em. All right, we're going to talk about probably the most misplayed hand in Hold'em, and that's ace king, whether it's suited or not. If the hand is suited, it only gives you a 3% better chance. So don't fall in love, obviously, because it's suited. But ace king is a hand that is misplayed all the time. All right, remember, pocket twos is in the lead against ace king. But ace king is a powerful hand if played properly. Ace king is a hand you should bring it in with a raise. Ace king is also a hand you should re-raise with. If you re-raise someone with ace king and they re-raise you back, now you could be in trouble because you could be up against pocket aces, pocket kings, what have you. But by raising with ace king, you're getting information. If you're re-raised, you're getting more information. If you're getting re-raised and you raise with ace king, now you got to put somebody on a big pair. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yeah.
And as I said, ace king is a hand that if you totally miss the flop, here's your flop, okay? 4, queen, 7, you totally missed, so you can safely be done with ace king. But what most people do, they'll raise before the flop with ace king. No matter what comes on the flop, they bet the flop. If they get raised, they call. If everybody checks to the raiser, which most people do, the ace king is gonna bet out, and he's gonna get callers, and he's gonna bet all the way to the river with no help. That's the worst thing you can do. With ace king, if you get no help on the flop, done. Done with the hand. Obviously, with this flop, if you had an ace king suited in hearts, you're not done with it because you picked up a flush draw. But just remember, ace king needs help, otherwise let it go. It is a hand you should raise with. If you're re-raised, then you gotta have your radar go up and you gotta know that you could be in a little bit of trouble. You have anything about ace king to add?
I mean, if you bet before the flop, I would bet obviously after the flop, and then if you're re-raised, then you're done with the hand. I mean, you might call that re-raise to see one more card, but
right, and what he's saying is obvious.
Done. Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah.
What he's saying though is basically, if you raise coming in with your ace king, no matter what comes on the flop, you're gonna bet the flop. Is that what you're saying? Right. And that's what you're assuming when somebody else has ace king. That's what you're hoping for. They're gonna make that bet every time. That's why when I was telling you, when you got your pocket pair of say twos and you think your opponent has ace king and this flop comes, you check raise them. If they call you, you're probably right, they have ace king. If they re-raise you, you're done with the hand.
Yeah, exactly.
So ace king is a powerful hand, but it needs help. If you get no help with ace king on the flop, generally you should be done with it. Don't put another penny into the pot unless you've received help on the flop. All right, what we're going to talk about now is playing a suited ace. That's a ace with a kicker of the same suit, but your kicker is a 9 or below. That's a suited ace, okay? This hand, should really only be played from a middle position to a late position. Yes, you can limp in with this hand occasionally, but it's not recommended. If you're tempted to play this hand in an early position, ace-5 suited, pretend that it's not suited. Pretend it's ace-5 offsuit. That'll help you resist temptation to play this crap hand in an early position. If you're in a middle position and you have 2 or 3 people that have limped in the pot, then with your ace-5 suited, you should limp in as well, okay? If you're in a late position, limp in with this hand as long as there are a few callers. But if you're in an early position with an ace suited, with your kicker 9 or below, resist temptation and don't play the hand. If you are to play this hand, it's only playable for its flush possibilities, its 2-pair possibilities, or if you hit trips. Reason is if an ace comes on the flop, okay, and you have an ace-5, what's your main issue? What's your main problem if you're playing an ace for top pair?
Kicker problem.
You're in trouble with this kicker, okay? Because most likely there's gonna be another hand out there with an ace-10, an ace-9, an ace-queen, and if you're playing your ace-5 suited for its top pair value, you're in a lot of trouble because of your kicker. You're gonna be in kicker trouble every time. So when you're playing an ace suited, you're playing it for its flush possibilities, you're playing it for 2-pair, or you're playing for trips. If you do happen to hit an ace on the flop, keep the pot small. Don't make a huge pot, because most likely, if it's a big pot, your kicker's in trouble. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So ace suited is playable. You can play it from any position. I do recommend folding it in an early position because again, it's 118 to 1 against you actually flopping a flush. So your pocket 2s are in the lead against this ace-5 suited. Now, if you are going to play your ace suited, you'd rather have your kicker be a 5, 4, 3, or a 2 because now you have a chance of making a straight with your suited ace. Where if you have ace-6, ace-7, ace-8, or ace-9, you cannot make a straight. So it's better to play ace-5 suited or below as far as the kicker goes because of the straight possibilities. It gives you an extra chance to make a hand with your ace suited. So in early position, try not to limp in with ace suited. In a middle position, you can raise with it if first in position. In late position, see the flop, call if there's already a few callers. If you're first to act and you're in a late position, this is a raising hand, okay? So there's your ace suited. All right, what we're going to talk about right now is losing sessions. It's going to happen. Everybody has losing sessions. Would you agree with that, TJ?
Yeah.
This guy TJ over here in the last 2 weeks has been on an incredible run online playing no limit side games. He's built up his bankroll to a very nice, juicy amount, okay? But his play went south a little bit. He's starting to give some of that bankroll back. What is the main reason why all this money that you've built up in the last 2 weeks, why is it now that you're starting to go backwards in your bankroll?
I've loosened up a lot.
You hear that? He said he's loosened up his play, okay? Because what happens is when you're winning, you start to get a little cocky. You're feeling real good about yourself. So the tight play that you've been using, the way you've built up your bankroll, now you're like, well, I'm going to play every hand now. So your play goes south a little bit and you go on a little losing run. So the key is with losing sessions is this. Number one, you should limit how much you lose for each session. That's all part of money management, which is the most important aspect of Hold'em other than learning how to play, okay? For example, if you're playing 5-10 limit hold'em, and let's say you buy in with $200. You should set yourself a stop loss, just like the stock market. I recommend online your session, lose about 30% of your buy-in, you're done. You end your session, okay? If you're playing in person, I recommend not losing more than 60% during your session. If you lose 60%, end your session, move on. If you want to play again, then you can rebuy, go to another table, what have you. The key is with your losing session is to cut your losses. Don't lose your entire buy-in in one sitting. As you're losing, your play goes south. Your play gets worse, you become loose, you make bad calls. TJ's a prime example, the guy who's been on a run, unbelievable, and then he got cocky. His play turned south, and he kept going, all right? He's given back way more than he should have, okay? As I said, I recommend you use a stop loss every time you sit at the table, have a predetermined amount. If you're playing live, you never want to go broke at the table. You always want to cash something out. Even if you buy in with $200, you only got $75 left, you're still walking over to the cashier, you're getting some money back. It's a psychological factor. Also, you must learn every time you lose. You must ask yourself, why did you lose? Did you loosen up like TJ did? Did you just get some bad beats? What is it? Did you lose focus while you were playing? Every time you lose, you must ask yourself, why did you lose? It's very important. You're going to have a lot of losing sessions. The key is limiting your losses. That means you will never go on tilt. You can ask every poker player. I'm sure TJ, myself, everybody that's played poker has at one time gone on tilt. Tilt means basically you got loose, you made stupid calls when you shouldn't have, you knew you're beat, but you still played anyway because you're hoping for a miracle card. So with your losing sessions, limit your losses, because over the course of a year, let's say you have 300 sessions of poker, you got 100 of them with losses, okay? If you limited those losses to a predetermined amount, just like you use a stop loss in the stock market, you'll save yourself a lot of money. You'll help yourself psychologically because you're going to cash some money out every single time you play. So it's very important with your losing sessions to learn why. Ask yourself why you lost. Okay, what we're going to talk about right now is tournaments. I know a lot of you play tournaments. You can't resist tournaments because they do have a lot of equity. There's a lot of value in tournaments. But again, I will reiterate the fact that professional poker players, people that make their living playing poker, 80% of their hold'em is playing limit. They're playing limit hold'em. 20% of it, their winnings will come from tournaments, okay? Because tournaments, especially now, the World Series of Poker had over 6,000 players. Doyle Brunson won the World Series of Poker back-to-back, 2 years in a row. One year there was 40 players, another year there was 35 players. Yeah, it's a great feat, and he's one of the greatest players of all time, but these days, you got thousands of people entering tournaments, okay? And with tournaments, you must speed up your play because of the blind structure. One tournament in particular, one type of tournament that has its own life to itself are rebuy tournaments. TJ, I would say, is a specialist at rebuy tournaments. A rebuy tournament is if you go broke in the first hour for a specific amount of money, you can rebuy chips again, okay? You'll see in rebuy tournaments, there's a lot of chimps playing rebuy tournaments. They'll spend thousands of dollars in the rebuy tournament, and the first prize might only be a couple thousand, whatever it is. TJ, tell me a little bit about rebuy tournaments and what your philosophy is on becoming profitable in rebuy tournaments.
Well, first thing is I would be willing to rebuy as much as possible. You go all in, any hand that you would go all in with, heads up. Any ace, any king, any pair, I'd be willing to do that. You don't want to get into the, where you're rebuying up to 10, 20 times, but but you have to be able to be willing to do it 10 to 20 times.
Okay.
Get that advantage while you can, you know, that extra hour, that first hour of rebuy, if you get any advantage is going to help you later in the tournament, but you have to be willing to give up a few.
So what he's saying is, if you're playing a rebuy tournament, you got to be willing to rebuy. You got to be willing to gamble. You got to be willing to take risks. You got to be willing to put all your chips in with crap and hope to get lucky. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, and if 3 or 4 people going ahead of you, even if you got 3-2, call. You got a chance to quadruple up on one hand if you get lucky. I mean,
so there it is.
It's $30, $100, $1,000. You know, it depends on what level you're playing, but got to be willing to do it.
So again, with a rebuy tournament, you got to be willing to gamble. You got to be willing to rebuy 5, 6, 7 times. Daniel Negreanu, one of the top poker players in the world, when he plays rebuy tournaments, he rebuys sometimes 10, 15, 20 times. That's not recommended for your average player. He's one of the best players in the world. But don't enter a rebuy tournament if you're not going to rebuy, or if you're only planning on rebuying once or twice. Plan on rebuying. Again, any ace you have, if there's a few people in the pot, put your money in. You're hoping to get lucky. So once the rebuy period is over, you got a big stack of chips. Because in rebuy tournaments, the way people are rebuying, how many people are in the event, you're going to need a lot of chips once the rebuy tournament is over. Once the rebuy period is over.
And you don't necessarily need it. It helps. I mean, if you end up after the rebuy going in with the minimum amount what you have to rebuy for at the break, then you know, if you're a good player, you can survive. But it's just any advantage that you can get. If you can double up, quadruple up, you know.
Right, so the bottom line is in the first hour of the rebuy tournament, you need to gather as many chips as possible. If you only, at the end of the hour, if you're only with what you started with, hey, that's the way it is, and then you got to play accordingly. But you really want to play kind of wild in your first hour of the rebuy tournaments, and you must be willing to rebuy as many times as it takes. Maybe 5, 6, even 7 rebuys. We're going to talk about single table tournaments. Online they call them sit and goes. We'll talk about limit tournaments. And we'll talk about no limit tournaments. One thing that all 3 of those tournaments have in common is you've got to play them in stages. There's the beginning of the tournament, there's the middle of the tournament, there's the end of the tournament, or in the money or close to the money. So tournaments should really be played in 3 stages, all 3. The sit and goes, or one table tournaments they're called, limit tournaments, and no limit tournaments. And again, I'm going to reiterate, professional poker players make 80% of their income playing limit hold'em. Okay, tournaments are for fun. Tournaments should be played as a reward for good limit play. You build your bankroll playing limit, you make big scores playing tournaments. So as far as single table tournaments, again, I would say TJ would be a specialist at one table tournaments. This guy makes a killing at one table tournaments. Basically, with one table tournaments, at the beginning, you want to play very tight. How tight do you want to play at the beginning of a single table tournament?
As tight as possible.
What hands are you going to play?
Only the premium hands. Yeah.
So basically, you're playing your aces, kings, queens. Are you playing jacks?
Yeah, pairs of jacks.
Are you bringing jacks in with a raise in a single tournament?
Yeah, it depends on the situation, yeah.
Depends on the situation.
But mostly, yes.
When he says depends on the situation, again, we're talking about position. Are you first to act? Are you late position and somebody has raised before you? Those are all things to take into consideration. But the beginning of your single table tournament, also known as sit and goes, the key word is tight, tight, tight. The reason is other players are going to become low stacked. Other players are going to be eliminated, okay, while you're sitting there just waiting. While you're waiting, what are you doing? You're drinking. TJ is known to drink a lot at the table, but that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're studying the other players. You're watching to see what they raise with. You're seeing who's tight, who's aggressive, okay? That's what you're doing. Would you agree with that?
And it's not worth trying to steal $10, $15 blinds, you know? I mean, it's not, you don't need to make a lot of moves. I mean, unless someone's re-raised you and you got a monster, then you're playing. But
so he's saying,
you're tight, it's not necessary to try to steal a $10 or $15 blind.
Right. No reason to steal early in a single table tournament. No reason to steal. It's best just to sit back, wait, play the cards that are dealt to you, study your opponents. Now, once the blinds have been raised 2-3 times, now you're in the middle of the tournament. Now pots are worth a little something. So now when you're gonna play, you still wanna play the premium hands, you still wanna play position, but when you're gonna play, you really wanna bring it in with a raise. If you don't have a hand you feel comfortable raising with, what should you do?
Fold.
Fold. Say it again.
Fold.
Fold. Folding is the best move most of the time when you're playing Hold'em, period. Sometimes when you're playing tournaments online, you'll see you're folding 90% of the time. That percentage will change as you go into the middle and the late stages of the tournament where you can't just keep constantly folding. But early in your single table tournaments, you're gonna be doing a lot of folding. The middle of the tournament, once the blinds are raised 3-4 times, when you're gonna play, you must play very aggressive and you should consider stealing. When you're on the button, in your first act, you wanna consider a steal. When you're stealing, if you're playing in a no-limit single tournament, your raise is standard about 3 times the big blind, 4 times, depending on your chip stack. But if you're gonna raise in a single table tournament, in the middle of the tournament, make sure it's at least 3 times the big blind, all right? Now, when you're in the later stages of your no-limit single table tournament, you gotta become outright aggressive. You wanna make normally your calling hands have gotta be raising hands. You gotta really start to play like a maniac once you're very close to the money, if not in the money. What would you add to that?
Well, once I'm in the money, exactly, I'm super aggressive.
Super aggressive. You always hear poker players telling you, you gotta be aggressive. When you're in the money in your single table tournament, hey, you've done your job, you're in the money. Now you gotta play like you don't care if you win. You gotta play with reckless abandon. You gotta play strong anything you're gonna play. You gotta be willing to go out in third, otherwise you can't get first.
I mean, in a single table tournament, the top 3 get paid. So once you're down to 3 people, your starting hands are way loose anyway. You're down to 3 people, so you're 3-handed.
Right.
I start with almost anything then, and I raise it and I play it hard. I mean, and once I'm in the money, then.
So like he's saying, once you're in the money in your single table tournament, you've done your job. You've at least doubled your money. Now you want to win. And the only way to win is to not care about losing. You gotta just not give a crap, all right? And when you play that way, you're gonna have the best of it most of the time. Yes, you gotta be selective. Yes, you gotta fold a lot of hands, but the less people at the table, the stronger you play. Heads up, strong. You're playing very strong. So your single table tournaments are in 3 stages. You got your beginning where you're playing very tight, only premium hands. You got your middle stage of the tournament where you're loosening up your standards, and when you're gonna play, you wanna bring it in with a raise, and then you got the money. When you're in the money, that's when it's all outright ultra aggression. Be willing to go out in third, or else you can't get first. Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about limit tournaments and no limit tournaments. And they're pretty similar to the philosophy about the single table tournaments, very similar. In a limit tournament, the beginning, it's very important to play tight, okay? In the early stages of a limit tournament, a lot of people are gonna become low stacked. Their chips are gonna be low. Those are people later on, when you haven't wasted any of your chips, that you're gonna take advantage of. As the tournament goes on, your chips gain value because people are getting knocked out. People are getting low on chips. So every chip that you can save is very valuable early in a limit tournament. You want to only, again, play premium hands, and when you play them strong. You must remember that there's a middle of the tournament. third, fourth, fifth round of the blinds. That's the portion of the tournament that if you're playing strong hold'em, strong limit hold'em, that's where you're going to get knocked out. If you get bad luck, you get bad beats on you, whatever, fourth, fifth, sixth round of a limit tournament is where you're going to get knocked out if you're playing very aggressive in the middle of the tournament. Once you're late in the tournament, close to the money, that's when you become ultra aggressive. You want to have a nice stack of chips when you get to the end of the tournament. The only way to do that is by taking risks towards the middle of the tournament. And as I said, you really want to raise when you're coming in. If you don't have a hand strong enough to raise, then you really shouldn't play. So that's limit tournaments. Very important not to lose chips early, to wait. And a no limit tournament, okay? Same type of situation. You want to be probably a little riskier in no limit tournaments. No limit tournaments is a great place to play your suited connectors. We've talked about suited connectors being crap hands, and in limit they are. But in a no limit tournament with your suited connectors, even if someone's raised, what can you do with a suited connector?
You can bust people when you hit.
You can bust people when you hit. That's coming from an animal, okay? If you've got your 6-7 suited, okay? Guys raising you with pocket aces. You see the flop and you hit a big hand with your suited connectors, it's disguised. He's gonna have no idea that's what you have. And again, you can take someone's entire stack in no limit with your suited connectors. In limit, you can win a nice pot, but you're gonna miss most of the time with your suited connector, so you really wanna stay away from them. But in no limit tournaments, they're a really good hand to have in the right situation. You could even raise with your suited connectors if you're first to enter the pot and you're in a good position. So the main thing in tournaments, at the beginning, you gotta play very tight. In the middle, you gotta loosen up and get aggressive. And by the end of the tournament, you're playing like a wild animal, okay? You should see this guy at the end of a tournament. He becomes a wild animal, and you should too. And you gotta take risks. If you don't risk everything in a tournament, you can't win. Tight players do not win tournaments. Tight players make a lot of money playing limit hold'em though. 80% of professional poker players play limit hold'em. Tournaments should be played as a reward for good limit play. I'm going to talk about something right now that everybody hates to hear, but it happens to everyone, and that's bad beats. Bad beats are a part of poker. Bad beats are something you can't do anything about. You'll have less bad beats in limit because usually you can raise somebody off of their very weak draw. In limit, you really can't do that. But you're going to get bad beats in both limit and in no limit. Nothing you can do. The key is how you deal with the bad beats, all right? A lot of people fly off the handle. A lot of people get crazy when they lose on the river. People lose on the river all the time. It's how you deal with losing on the river is what sets apart a professional poker player from a donator/chimp. A lot of chimps playing poker. 90% of people are losers. I say that again and again. You can be 10% of the people that win if you deal with your bad beats properly. And the way to deal with them is to forget about them. Bad beat happened, forget about it. Use the information for later. That player that drew out on you by calling with his weak hand, know that for later and keep it in your head. You'll know that every time you play against that particular player. Another way to avoid bad beats is to play less hands. Simple, play less hands. You'll have less bad beats. Folding before the flop is the best play a great deal of the time. So a simple way to avoid bad beats is to play less hands. We're going to talk about building a bankroll. Some people have different reasons for building a bankroll. I like to talk about building a bankroll that you can actually pay bills with. And the way to do that is you need to build a bankroll slowly. Let's say you're going to play 1-2 limit hold'em. That's really all you can afford, and you got a couple $100. Let's say you got $200, and that's going to be your bankroll. That's really not much of a bankroll, but if that's what you have, that's what you have. The key is to stay at the same limit, 1-2 limit hold'em, until you've built your bankroll to, let's say, $1,000. Okay. Once you've built your bankroll to $1,000 playing 1-2, okay, then you can go to the next level. Then you can start playing 2-4. Don't start playing 2-4 until you've built your bankroll to, say, 1,000. Reason is because if you've built your bankroll to, say, $500 and you go play 2-4 limit, you can go through $500 very quickly. Okay, a couple bad sessions in a row and now you got 200 as your bankroll and now you're back to square one. So the key is don't jump up into another limit until you've got a good amount to absorb losses. So let's say now you've built your bankroll to 1,000. Now you go to 2-4 hold'em, all right? So once you've built your bankroll to, say, 1,000, that's when you can safely move up to the next limit, 2-4, all right? Once you've built that to, say, 2,000, now you can jump up to 3-6 limit. Once you're at 3-6 limit, you got your bankroll at a couple grand, now you can move to 4-8. The whole key to building your bankroll is to build it very slowly. You can't get impatient one day and say, okay, now I got $1,000, I'm gonna play 5-10. It doesn't work that way. You need to build your bankroll very slowly. Once you've got your bankroll up to a comfortable amount, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is, now you can maybe remove a few $100s a week, maybe a few $100s a month, whatever you want to do. You should set aside a specific bankroll for poker and build it slowly. Obviously, you want to build up to the highest limits you feel comfortable with. If you've got 10,000 in your bankroll, you can definitely be comfortable playing 5-10. And if you're profitable, you're following rules, you're folding when you should, you're using proper money management, you can build your bankroll indefinitely until maybe one day you can quit your job. That's not everyone's goal to be a professional poker player. Some people just are playing for extra money, extra income, or what have you. But the key is to building your bankroll is to build it slow and steady. Slow and steady. We're going to talk very briefly about categorizing players. Some poker books have 8-9 categories for players. For advanced hold'em players, people that are making a living playing poker, then you should definitely study all these books about categorizing players. But what I look for and what you should look for is who's aggressive, who's passive, who limps in, who's always raising, and who, when they're raising, has the goods. So you're looking at really tight players. When someone's really, really tight and they raise, their raise has a lot of weight, a lot of merit to it because they're folding most of their hands. But if you've got a very aggressive player who's raising all the time, he's always involved in the action, okay? You can categorize him as a loose player, and that is a player that you'd want to challenge with somewhat of a mediocre hand, okay? So you can categorize players as being aggressive or being passive. And by staying away from the aggressive people and attacking the passive players, you'll have the best of it. Yes, there's lots more categories. There's tight passive, there's aggressive passive. But like I said, you're looking for aggressive players who you want to stay away from unless you have a very good hand, and you're looking to be the aggressor against the passive players. Most players out there, As I said, they're losers, and most of them play way, way too tight. So I hope this has helped you a little bit. If you follow the concepts that we've talked about, you'll do well. Most people don't have the discipline to follow the concepts that we've talked about. So you should have the discipline. You need to have the discipline to be a profitable Hold'em player, okay? This DVD should be watched and watched again and watched again. My book, which is available, it's called Texas Hold'em Essentials. This is available on my website, HollywoodPokerAcademy.com. This is full of tips. It covers pretty much what we covered today, yet it goes into a little further detail. So in closing, I'd like to wish you luck next time you play. If you'd like any more information on me or on the Hollywood Poker Academy, just check out HollywoodPokerAcademy.com. Good luck.